Told you so. I'm the told you so guy. Apparently.
Okay, let's talk about Pax Judaica. So you say right now we're in a Pax Americana, and we're moving toward a Pax Judaica, which is what exactly?
The year 1688. This is the Glorious Revolution. The King of England is overthrown by the nobility, and William Orange, who is from the Dutch Republic, he's installed as the king. And this is significant because this creates the sovereignty of Parliament. Parliament is above the king. And what happens next is 1694, the creation of the Bank of England. And the Bank of England are these private interests, transnational capital. And the Bank of England, they are guaranteed by Parliament. And so this creates the idea that these private investors can lend money to the Bank of England. If they make money, they keep their money. But if they lose money, then the Parliament, the people, guarantee their losses. So it's socialized losses, privatized gains. So this becomes the new model of global finance. In Europe at this time, the world is in flames. 30 Years' War, Protestants versus Catholics, and all these rich people, Dutch Republic, the Habsburg Empire, the Catholic Church, they need to be able to store their wealth in a more safe place as the world burns. And the safest place at this time is of course England, because it's being protected by the Royal Navy. All this capital shifts over to England and it's stored in the Bank of England, and this allows for the creation of the British Empire. Britain, with the Bank of England, they're able to fight 7 wars against Napoleon until Napoleon is finally defeated, and then England becomes the most dominant nation in the world. This creates Pax Brittanica. And then, after World War I, World War II, this creates Pax Americana, and then you have the creation of the Federal Reserve. But now that America is burning, where do you go now? You go to Israel. Why? Because first of all, Israel has nuclear weapons. Israel will be safe. Second of all, the Middle East has been destroyed. Israel has no competitors. Iraq, Libya, Syria, they've all been burned to the ground. Iran is the last on the list. And so once you burn Iran to the ground, then Israel has complete dominance over the Middle East. It can be just rebuilt in a new image. And this new image will be one of AI surveillance. So ideas that you have, right? Digital currency, digital ID, you're going to face a lot of stiff resistance in America because Americans like the freedom. But hey, the Middle East has been destroyed. You can now replace the populations with Filipinos, with Chinese, with Indians. And then you can insert microchips into their bloodstreams. Now you have this perfect surveillance state where everyone is monitored. Their emotions are constantly being calibrated, being controlled by this surveillance state. And then you introduce transhumanism, where rich people in the world can go to Jerusalem and experience all this transhumanist technology, organ transplants that allow them to live 100 years. Capital needs to move to a more safe place, which is Israel. But also, these oligarchs, they want to achieve a transhumanist vision of the world. Israel has this technology. But also, they want to create a surveillance state in order to maintain permanent control of the world, and that's Pax Judaica.
What you just watched was Professor Zhang Zhuiqin laying out a theory about how global power relocates when an old order begins to collapse. In this video, I'm going to use that framework to explain why it is a mistake to think about power purely in terms of one president versus another or one country versus another, while the masses focus on Trump,
Why do you think I call them the United States of Israel now?
like America First, or even in Africa, focusing on countries and presidents formed and shaped by Western colonialism. A much bigger game is being played. That game depends on our distraction, allowing systems of dominance to advance while we argue over personalities, flags, and symbols. If you're interested in understanding how Africa can use this understanding of Pax Judaica to break free from extraction and dependency, then this video is for you. If you don't know me, my name is TJ, I'm Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel,
Make your browser fast. Make your browser safe. Make your browser Chrome.
Make it get off my screen.
we talk about African geopolitics. So around the world, trust in institutions is collapsing, and so power is shifting as a result. What we are seeing emerging is a global surveillance and enforcement system. Under Pax Brittanica, power rested on colonies and naval dominance. On Pax Americana, it rested on military-industrial complex, the dollar, and institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. Under this next phase, power rests on data, surveillance, technology, financial compliance, and permanent security logic. Control no longer requires mass consent. It only requires compliance, and anyone who is inconvenient to that system is neutralized. not always violently, but administratively, legally, digitally. So why does Pax Judaica matter to the continent of Africa? Well, it's because compliance is now being engineered through technology, through AI, digital systems, payment rails, and data collection that already is being rolled out across the continent under the language of development and inclusion. I just want to take a quick moment to thank everybody that has subscribed to my Substack. I really appreciate the support. If you're out there and you want to support this message of African sovereignty, then I highly recommend that you head over there as well. On a platform like YouTube, a message like this can be shadow banned. I could even be deplatformed. It's happened to others in this space already. But if you subscribe to my newsletter, it means that you and I can have a direct dialogue via email without any intermediary that may want to censor this message. There is a paid tier if you want to support financially. That's about the cost of a coffee each month. But if you don't want to do that, there's a free tier. And so even if it's just for the purposes of keeping this message alive, you can go and subscribe totally for free. The link is in the description right now, and I look forward to connecting with you via email directly real soon. You see, the implementation of this new order of Pax Judaica is exactly why the United States political class, even the European political class, may talk a little bit, but is willing really to do nothing about events that happen in places like Gaza and Sudan. The US state itself is deeply aligned with interests that see Israel not merely as an ally, but as infrastructure. A strategic node where financial capital, military innovation, and surveillance technology intersects. In the same way, London once anchored Pax Brittanica and Washington anchors Pax Americana, Israel is positioned as a critical hub for this emerging order because it is uniquely equipped to enforce and export the tools this system depends on. And it does not matter whether it's Republicans or Democrats in charge. The faces change, but the direction does not. And this is where Africa should recognize a familiar pattern. Just as we often talk about Western puppets governing African states, many of the leaders presented as sovereign in Europe and North America are themselves constrained. The real power does not sit fully in Congress or the White House or European parliaments. It sits behind them in lobbies, financial institutions, and security networks. And these systems benefit from this transition and quietly set the limit for acceptance policies. Under this new model, genocide is very possible. We've seen it already because sometimes populations become obstacles to these goals. The Palestinians in Gaza are inconvenient. Iran is also inconvenient. And so pressure builds, sanctions tighten, narratives harden, and eventually violence is justified as necessary. This is exactly how empires behave when they reorganize. And this system of control will not stop in the Middle East. It extends into Europe. It shows up in every place that still describes itself as free and democratic.
This morning, 2 policemen appeared on my doorstep, just here, to serve this, a summons ordering me to the police headquarters to be interrogated by the Greek DEA, our drug-busting police department. Shortly after New Year's, I appeared on a podcast organized by young people to answer their questions on everything that concerns today Gen Z. Social media, the meaning of life, the future of work, job prospects, what I call techno-feudalism, and so on. At some point, they asked me if I had ever used drugs. Determined not to do a Bill Clinton, remember that laughable I didn't inhale quip? I said I had. Apart from pot, I told them I had one experience, 36 years ago in Sydney, of taking ecstasy. It was pleasant. I danced for 16 hours non-stop effortlessly, but then, I added, it gave me such a migraine for a week that I never used again. That was my introduction to making the point that however pleasant drug taking may seem, there is a price to pay. And that the ultimate price is dependence, addiction. The end of liberty, I said emphatically in that video podcast. Do you see where this is going? Yep. The Greek police have opened an investigation of me under the charge of aiding and abetting the narco-mafia. Do me a favor, folks. Please don't tell Trump. Now, seriously, at a time of war, genocide, stupendous exploitation, inequality, and so on, my tiny little trouble with the inane Greek police is neither here nor there. But it is important, because here in Europe, many people still live under the illusion that we have liberty, rationality, and freedom which no one can take away from us. We don't. Dark forces are at work, pushing us into a postmodern version of the Dark Ages. So people, beware. They are out there to take away from us the last remnants of autonomy and freedom that we have. Resistance is literally existence.
Ladies and gentlemen, This is what a global police state looks like when it's still in its early stages. Not tanks on the streets, but summons, investigations, digital tracking, financial pressure. This is enforcement without spectacle. And this is exactly why independent platforms and direct lines of communication matter more than ever. Africa itself is not peripheral to all of this. Africa is foundational to it because the future runs on minerals, data, and energy. Cobalt, lithium, uranium, rare earths. These are not optional resources. This is the backbone of AI and weapon systems, surveillance technology in general. This is why Congo and
Have a look at what minerals, rare earth minerals, resources we've got in Australia. We're not a member of NATO. Why do you think they're dissolving NATO? Why do you think they're dissolving NATO? So that we're all on our own.
never knows peace. This is why Sudan has descended into a mass killing with little global urgency. And this is why the Sahel and parts of West Africa are kept in a state of permanent managed instability. Control does not require chaos forever. It only requires compliant leadership. No doubt you are already seeing digital ID systems, centralized biometric databases, cashless payment experiments, surveillance infrastructure sold as development, stability sold as progress. Leaders who resist are smeared in the media, isolated and or removed. The situation in Benin that happened a few weeks ago shows this method clearly. You may have seen my video on the failed military coup, and from an African sovereignty point of view, that coup was a failure. But the real coup has just unfolded in the last few days, and it had nothing to do with soldiers or people rising up under a sovereignty movement at all. While attention was focused on the failed takeover, the sitting president used that moment to consolidate full control of the state. Electoral laws had been rewritten so the opposition could not meet newly imposed thresholds. Sponsorship rules were tightened so that challengers would not even appear on the ballot. Courts were packed with loyalists, so legal challenges would always fail. Elections still happened, yes, but political choice was engineered out of the system. The result is that Benin is effectively now under single-party control. And crucially, when the resistance movement came to try and take over the country a few weeks ago in that failed coup, Nigeria and ECOWAS were used at the behest of France to shut down that opportunity. You see, under this imperialist system, the one we're talking about leading to Pax Judaica, Benin must remain aligned with France. You see, imperialism can be imposed through military force, but here it was far more efficient. Power was consolidated by weaponizing the language of sovereignty itself. The chain of command works like this. A compliant leader governs Benin. That leader remains aligned with French interests, and France in turn operate within the wider system shaped by Pax Judaica. So when we talk about Pax Judaica, what we're really talking about is a dominant group of elites behind the scenes, pulling the strings for countries. They used to back America as the place where dominance of power resides. And before America, that group was backing the United Kingdom. But now that group has shifted cross borders. America and its massive national debt and possibly even civil war will no longer be the place where this shadow system of power resides. And of course, it will now be Israel. Now we're going to have to see if this truly unfolds the way that the professor at the beginning of the video explains. But you must admit, whether you know about this or not, the signs are all there for this to be very real and true. And at the very least, Africa must understand this situation clearly. Because if we continue to think in terms of flags and presidents, we will miss the real fight. This is not about which country is powerful. It's about which system is being imposed. And under this system, Africa is meant to remain the raw mineral extraction zone. As of right now, Russia and China sit outside of this particular sphere of control. And I believe this is where Africa needs to diversify. If you notice, these places are demonized in Western media. Their refusal to submit fully to the system makes them useful partners to Africa, not as saviors, but as counterweights. This is why alternatives like BRICS and non-dollar payment systems matter, and why South-South cooperation is essential, and that includes inter-Africa trade. The question is whether Africans recognize what is happening early enough to resist it, not violently, but strategically, through unity. sovereignty, and by looking beyond colonial borders imposed under Pax Brittanica. Because once this system is fully locked in, elections will still happen, governments will still exist, flags will still fly, but real choice may just disappear. The endgame will be a managed world, a world where you will be restricted in the way you speak, move, and trade. And Africa can either seek to fight and control its destiny itself, or remain locked into supplying minerals, data, and compliance to a system it did not design. I would love to know what you guys think about this. I mentioned Pax Judaica in a previous video, and I knew that it needed its own topic. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much if I asked you to write the words "break from the distractions" in the comment section? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you like the channel, you like what I'm doing, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
You get it now? Yeah, get it now? Exactly what I've been trying to tell you. Exactly what I've been trying to tell you, lad. Pax Brittanica? Heard of. Didn't know that much about it. Heard of. Pax Judaica? Yeah, it all makes sense to me now. Well, it's what I've been trying to tell you. I just didn't have a name for it. Like I said, my little pattern brain goes off. It forms the patterns, it forms the pictures. It's exactly... Just learn. Will yous?